Arjun and Priya Malhotra were the picture of perfection, young, wealthy, and celebrating what seemed like the most glamorous wedding Los Angeles had ever seen. But behind the glittering chandeliers and million-dollar smiles was a dangerous secret. A $5 million marriage scam that would end not in happily ever after, but with betrayal, death, and a bride caught fleeing with blood money just days later. In March 2019, Los Angeles was alive with whispers of one of the grandest weddings the city had ever seen. The marriage of Arjun and Priya Malhotra was not just another celebration. It was a spectacle designed to dazzle. The ceremony took place inside a Beverly Hills mansion with sweeping staircases, mirrored halls, and a ballroom that looked like something out of a royal fairy tale. Imported orchids spilled from golden vases, chandeliers sparkled like crystal rain, and a string quartet played softly as hundreds of guests arrived in luxury cars. The couple themselves looked like they had stepped straight out of a magazine. Arjun, tall and confident, wore a designer tuxedo rumored to cost more than most people's cars. Priya, radiant in a handcrafted silk lehenga, glittered with diamonds and emeralds. They smiled for photographs, posed beneath a floral arch, and waved as drones captured sweeping shots from the sky. For guests, it seemed like a modern-day love story, a union of two young dreamers who had built a fortune and were now celebrating their perfect life together. Influencers posted photos of the event online, calling it the wedding of the year. People marveled at how a couple so young could afford a celebration that rivaled Hollywood royalty. The champagne flowed endlessly, the food was flown in from 3 different countries, and the entertainment included Bollywood dancers and even a surprise fireworks show that lit up the entire Beverly Hills skyline. On the surface, it was a flawless display of love, wealth, and success. Yet behind every sparkling decoration and stage smile was something far more dangerous. The truth was hidden in plain sight, carefully buried beneath glitter and gold. What no one knew was that this wedding was not the beginning of a fairy tale, but the opening scene of a crime story that would shock Los Angeles. Arjun and Priya Malhotra had carefully built their reputation as a glamorous, successful couple, but their true empire rested on deception. For nearly 5 years, they had masterminded one of the most profitable marriage scams operating in Los Angeles. On the surface, they appeared to run a high-end matchmaking agency for immigrants and wealthy elites looking for quick solutions to legal residency. In reality, they were exploiting desperation and greed. Wealthy individuals paid staggering amounts, sometimes $500,000 per arrangement, for connections that promised security, love, and legal status. The Malhotras knew exactly how to exploit loopholes, creating false marriage licenses, fabricating proof of relationships, and laundering money through shell companies that appeared legitimate. Every step was orchestrated with precision. They recruited actors to play spouses during immigration interviews, staged photo shoots to create the illusion of long-term relationships, and even paid off small-time officials who looked the other way. Their network spread across states, but Los Angeles was their goldmine. By 2019, they had quietly amassed nearly $5 million, hidden across offshore accounts and luxury assets under borrowed names. Their mansion, their cars, and even the extravagant wedding were funded by the misery of those who trusted them. To their victims, they seemed untouchable. Few dared to speak out, fearing legal consequences or deportation if they admitted to their part in the sham marriages. Those who grew suspicious found themselves stonewalled by lawyers and threats. Arjun thrived in this environment, always hungry for bigger risks and higher profits, while Priya worked behind the scenes to polish their image, smiling for photographs and playing the role of the perfect wife. To outsiders, they looked like a power couple at the height of success. In truth, every dollar they flaunted carried a hidden cost, and the weight of their lies was gr. Behind the glittering image of success, cracks began to show in Arjun and Priya's carefully constructed life. To the world, they were untouchable, but inside their mansion, the atmosphere grew tense. Arjun had developed a dangerous appetite for risk. Nights once spent planning new ventures with Priya turned into nights lost at poker tables and exclusive underground casinos. Money that had taken months to launder vanished in hours, feeding his hunger for adrenaline. He became reckless, bragging about their wealth in places where whispers traveled fast. Priya saw the danger clearly. Each careless move tightened the noose around them. Unlike her husband, Priya was meticulous. She believed survival depended on caution and foresight. Quietly, she began keeping records of every transaction, every shell company, and every payment hidden from Arjun's knowledge. She encrypted files and stored them away, convinced that one day she might need them. Her instincts told her that the empire they had built was more fragile than it appeared. She began pulling away emotionally, calculating her own exit strategy in case everything collapsed. Unbeknownst to Arjun, one of their victims had already grown suspicious. A businessman who had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars decided to fight back, hiring a private investigator to follow the trail. When the investigator approached Priya, she didn't push him away. Instead, she listened. She shared fragments of information under the guise of innocence, weaving herself into the investigation while keeping her husband in the dark. For her, betrayal wasn't personal, it was survival. The closer their empire edged toward exposure, the more desperate Arjun became to expand it, while Priya prepared to protect only herself. Their partnership, once united by ambition, had transformed into a quiet war of secrets, one that would soon turn deadly. The wedding night was meant to be the crowning jewel of Arjun and Priya's carefully curated image. After hours of music, dancing, and endless champagne, the last of the guests drifted out of the Beverly Hills mansion, leaving behind only silence and the faint scent of roses. Staff began clearing tables and extinguishing candles, while the newlyweds retreated to their private suite. To outsiders, it seemed like the beginning of a perfect life together. But inside that room, the story took a dark turn. Sometime after midnight, a crash echoed through the hallways. One staff member later recalled hearing something heavy slam against the marble floor, followed by silence. When morning arrived, the scene inside the suite was chilling. Arjun Malhotra lay sprawled near the edge of a glass table, his head fractured against the sharp corner. Blood had seeped into the cream-colored carpet, creating a stark contrast against the luxury of the room. At first glance, it seemed like a tragic accident, an intoxicated groom stumbling and falling after a long night of celebration. But investigators quickly found details that didn't align. The glass of whiskey Arjun had been sipping was laced with a powerful sedative, a drug rarely found outside hospital settings. Traces of it were later confirmed in his system. The amount was enough to cloud his balance, weaken his reflexes, and make any fall far more deadly. Priya, dressed in her wedding gown, claimed she had fallen asleep before the accident, but her story left gaps too wide to ignore. What had begun as a night of glamour had transformed into a crime scene. Beneath the glitter of the Malhotra's wedding lay a far darker truth, one that pointed to betrayal hidden behind every smile and celebration. As investigators dug deeper into the sudden death of Arjun Malhotra, troubling details began to surface. The first major clue was uncovered in financial records. Just weeks before the wedding, Priya had taken out a massive life insurance policy on her husband worth $3 million. The timing raised immediate suspicion. To detectives, it looked less like an accident and more like a carefully staged plan. What began as a tragic mystery was quickly shifting into a calculated crime. The search of the Malhotra mansion revealed even more. Hidden in a locked drawer inside Priya's vanity was a small, encrypted hard drive. When investigators managed to access its contents, they were stunned. The drive contained meticulous records of the couple's marriage scam operation, fake contracts, forged documents, payment transfers, and notes detailing each victim. Every scam was cataloged in detail, with names, dates, and amounts owed. It was clear Priya had been preparing for the day she might need to use this evidence for her own advantage. The files told a damning story. They revealed that Priya had quietly positioned herself as the sole controller of the money, while Arjun's recklessness put their empire at risk. Her plan became more obvious with each discovery: secure the fortune, eliminate her husband as a liability, and vanish before the scam collapsed under investigation. Friends and acquaintances later testified that Priya often spoke of wanting freedom and hinted at moving abroad, away from the chaos of Los Angeles. The more investigators uncovered, the more it became clear that Arjun's death was no accident. It was the final step in a carefully orchestrated scheme. The glamorous bride, who had dazzled guests just hours earlier, now stood at the center of a dark plot fueled by greed, betrayal, and cold precision, AS investigators dug deeper into the sudden death of Arjun Malhotra. Troubling details began to surface. The first major clue was uncovered in financial wreck. Priya Malhotra's carefully woven plan began to unravel almost immediately after the wedding. 3 days after her husband's death, she arrived at Los Angeles International Airport, dressed in designer clothing and carrying 2 oversized suitcases. Inside were bundles of cash, expensive jewelry, and luxury watches worth millions. Her destination was Dubai, a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. To her, it was the perfect escape. But federal agents were already waiting. Acting on a warrant, they intercepted her at the departure gate. In front of stunned travelers, the glamorous bride was handcuffed and escorted away. Her arrest opened the floodgates. The hard drive seized from her home, paired with testimony from victims and banking records, exposed the full scale of the marriage scam. News outlets around the world reported on the case, calling it one of the most audacious frauds in Los Angeles history. The story spread across India and the United States, captivating the public with its mix of wealth, deception, and murder. The fairy tale wedding that once dazzled social media was now infamous for its deadly aftermath. During the trial, prosecutors painted Priya as cold and calculating, a woman who valued money above loyalty or life itself. They detailed how she orchestrated the scam, manipulated victims, and plotted her husband's death as a final step in securing her fortune. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury needed little time to decide her fate. Priya was convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and first-degree murder, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The legacy of the Malhotra wedding became a chilling reminder that appearances can hide sinister truths. What began as a glittering celebration of love ended in betrayal, prison, and the haunting reality that greed can destroy everything it touches.